Army First Lieutenant Richard Warren Mithoff was stationed at a German POW camp in Lufkin, Texas when he married Frances Moss, a local grade school teacher. Their son, Richard Warren Mithoff Jr., was born on December 19, 1945. After the war, the young family moved to El Paso, where Richard grew up seeking adventure by hiking and shooting tin cans with his .22 in the nearby Franklin Mountains. In high school, fictional champions fighting for the little guy like Shane, Perry Mason, and Atticus Finch provided a new kind of adventure for Richard. Then, fictional stories were replaced by books on real lawyers and real trials. And soon, Richard was off to the University of Texas to become a lawyer himself. As the social chairman of his fraternity at UT, Richard was without a date to a party he was throwing, and he asked out a girl he didn't even know. It took her 2 years to settle him down, but soon after they graduated, Virginia McTaggart, Jenny, married Richard on June 29, 1968. That fall, Richard joined the Army Reserve, but was able to get in his first year at UT Law School before reporting for active duty. After Army boot camp, Richard had another kind of boot camp, working for legendary Texas trial lawyer Warren Burnett. The experience confirmed what he already knew. Richard wanted to be in the courtroom. Returning to UT, Richard was an editor of the Texas Law Review, but the Kent State protest may have had a greater impact on his career. Without even a client, Richard was denied a parade permit for a UT protest march. Richard had to borrow a coat to hear Judge Jack Roberts' order, allowing the protesters to march in the streets. Before he even had a law license, Richard was becoming a champion himself. In 1971, he became a clerk for legendary federal judge William Wayne Justice. Later, in a Texas Law Review article, Richard would compare him to Atticus Finch. While in Tyler, he and Jenny also became parents to Michael and Caroline. In 1974, with letters of recommendation from two Texas legends, Judge Justice and Warren Burnett, Richard joined another legend, Joe Jamail, at the firm that would later be called Jamail, Collius, and Mithoff. In 1977, only 4 years after joining Jamail, Joe handed Richard a breast implant case on a Friday before the trial was to begin on Monday. Richard received a $170,000 verdict, very significant at the time. And then he argued all the appeals himself, writing his own briefs on a portable typewriter, and won the case before the Texas Supreme Court. Richard Mithoff's reputation as an advocate was now established. In 1992, Richard formed Mithoff and Jacks with his friend Tommy Jacks, until he established the Mithoff Law Firm in 2005. During his 38 years as a lawyer, Richard has won many sizable verdicts, recovering more than $1 million in over 150 personal injury and commercial cases. His litigation has caused many changes in the practice of medicine, including hospital requirements and procedures. One case was described as a precedent-setting decision by the American Hospital Association, saving thousands of lives every year. And his litigation has also changed the product design and usage of tampons and the Dalcon Shield IUD. Though he is often on the plaintiff's sides in medical malpractice cases, Richard and his wife Jenny have been generous supporters of the medical profession in Houston. Richard donated half of his $20 million fee from Harris County's tobacco litigation settlement to establish the Children's Health Fund, which is part of the Harris County Hospital District Foundation. Richard and Jenny have endowed a professorship and community outreach perinatal centers at the UT School of Medicine, funded a Life Flight program, and the world-class trauma center at Ben Taub Hospital is named for Richard and Jenny Mithoff. Richard has also endowed a series of scholarships at the UT Law School and Business School. He served on committees for the Texas Supreme Court, the State Bar of Texas, and the Texas Commission for Lawyer Discipline. and his list of honors is simply too long to read. Richard's adventures in the Franklin Mountains have now been replaced by climbing Kilimanjaro and the Grand Tetons. But the adventure that Richard finds in the courtroom has no replacement. He loves getting into the case and the challenge of explaining his client's story to the jury. In his words, it is a great honor to stand up for people who have been injured or wrongly accused or compromised. And it is one that Richard Mithoff does not take lightly.
Well, Richard is an altogether superior human being.
He's just not a stuck-up guy.
He makes you feel like you're one of his best friends. People believe he's one of them.
Richard values everyone.
Open and personable.
Warm and friendly.
Has kind of a dry wit.
He is funny.
He's just fun to be around.
You can't really be around Richard for very long without feeling really better about yourself.
He reinvents himself every day and is magnificent whatever he does.
He's a man you can trust, and you know it immediately as soon as you talk to him.
You know, people fake being sincere. Well, point is you can't, and he doesn't, and he is. So that, to me, defines him.
Richard Mithoff is a gem.
He's one of the truly great trial lawyers of this country.
He has a reputation among his colleagues, among those who oppose him in the courtroom, among judges, as being at the top of his profession.
A brilliant student of the law.
He's respectful, well prepared.
Juries respect him because they recognize that he's honest, he's ethical, and he knows the law, he knows what the hell he's doing.
An inspiration to all who practice law.
He's a damn good lawyer.
There's a lot of things you can't just be taught that Richard has naturally.
He's credible. He talks to people. He doesn't talk at people.
He's not acting. It's not a courtroom drama.
To distill complicated issues into simple to understand consequences.
Figure out in a quick soundbite how to make people understand it, how to make them get it.
That's genius. That's the Picasso of trial work.
There is always what I call the epiphany moment.
Being relentless in the pursuit of the case.
You will look over at the jury and they get it.
And that's, I think, what makes Richard so great at what he does.
It wasn't the winning or the losing. It was just helping his client.
Their cause is his cause, and they are lucky to have him by their side, and conversely, I think he feels lucky that they are by his side.
He's essentially a humanist. He wants to help those who are least able to help themselves.
And helped to found the Judge William Wayne Justice Center for Public Interest Law. This is altogether fitting because justice has been a major theme of Richard's personal and professional life.
He really loves what he does because of the causes he champions and because of the people he can help.
His uncanny ability to know right from wrong, to know good from evil, and to recognize how things are, but probably more importantly, how things should be.
He is a dear person who exudes warmth and good humor and impatience and intolerance with injustice.
Richard is dedicated to making things better.
Both professionally and personally, he has literally dedicated himself to helping the underdog.
Richard and Jenny Mithoff have devoted their life to public service.
Two of the finest, kindest, most generous people you can ever imagine.
Who opens up the warmth of his home with he and his wife offering a venue for fundraising.
They look for good causes to support. They look for causes that might be neglected by others.
Children's Museum, we refer to Richard and Jenny as the Mighty Mithoffs.
I discovered his name and his wife's name
in an art museum, in a Western art museum in El Paso, Texas.
They liked the programs that we were doing in the community and the service to kids from all over the community, but they knew we were too crowded. So they decided to go out and raise $35 million.
Compassion enters really every phase of his life.
When you see that translated into his own personal conviction, it's a privilege to see that in action, and it's very powerful.
He's a great supporter of the University of Texas.
We consider ourselves very lucky to be able to claim Richard as one of our own.
His gift has made it possible that we build our new north end zone.
And very grateful to Richard and Jenny for their generosity.
Richard gives his money, he gives his time. He's made calls to help me find other lawyers that have expertise in a particular area and challenge them to give pro bono services.
How kind of ironic and wonderful in a way that a lawyer who has spent a lot of his time adverse to the medical profession.
Those people who wouldn't ordinarily have access to legal care or medical care, he has devoted his life to providing both.
Would somehow figure out a way to work with the medical community here in Houston and maybe elsewhere.
Jenny and Richard Mithoff Emergency Center at Ben Taub Hospital.
In establishing these perinatal clinics for children, in his support of Lifelight, the Memorial Hermann-based helicopter service.
The more blessings he receives, the more success.
He represented the county, Harris County, in tobacco litigation.
The more he seems fueled to give it back.
Richard received a very large fee as a result of that representation, but he actually took half of that fee and gave it back to the county and told them, I want you to provide health care to indigent children with this money.
It's always about the cause or about the mission, and he's not one to take the credit or make the messenger more important than the message.
Mithoff is 1 in a million.
It's a classic example of, throwing the little rock and watching the ripples in the stream.
He's not only a good apple, but one of the best apples we have in Texas.